Okay, today we're looking at the legendary Gearbox Pro paddles, and these are what are being called Gen 3 paddles, meaning they're cooked hot like Gen 2 paddles, but use more foam and sometimes other materials in the interior of the paddle than most Gen 2 paddles, which usually only have foam around the edges of the honeycomb core. And you've probably heard a lot about Joola's version of Gen 3 paddles, which were removed from USAP's approval list soon after they went on sale, which means they're not allowed in tournament play. The Vatic Oni Gen 3 paddles were also delisted, and then Ronbus seems to have canceled their own Gen 3 paddles as of now as well. However, as of the recording of this video, the Gearbox Pro paddles are still USAP approved and very much allowed for tournament play. So they seem to be the only Gen 3 option that's tournament legal at the moment, and if you know of others, definitely let me know in the comments. And basically what makes Gen 3 paddles so different is that the construction process allows for paddles to have a lot more power baked into them, and so they hit really, really hard. And the Gearbox Pros are no exception. Okay, so now let's get into the specs. I want to start with the more popular of the two, the Gearbox Pro Power Elongated. It's 14 millimeters thick. It's got a Toray T700 raw carbon fiber face. The shape is elongated, and it's actually the old school blade style, so it has an 11-inch head. It is a Gen 3 paddle. It has what is called an SST core, a solid span technology core, and that contains patented carbon fiber chambers. The dimensions are 16.5 by 7.375 inches. The handle is 5.5 inches. The grip circumference is 4 inches. The weight is 8 ounces. It has a 1-year manufacturing defects warranty, and the price is $275. And once again, this is USAP approved. Okay, like all Gen 3 paddles, there's a lot of stuff inside this paddle. In this case, Gearbox Specialty SST core seems to have carbon fiber ribs as well as foam throughout the paddle's interior. And all that extra mass really helps you generate a lot of power when you swing. And for the elongated version, that stretched out shape lets you do even more with the additional plow through. But what's interesting about the Gearbox Pro Power is that it's actually pretty controllable if you're a soft hitter that doesn't have a big swing. And that happens to be the kind of player I am. So I actually still get really great drops and resets, which is not the case with a lot of other hot paddles, even ones that aren't Gen 3. However, if you swing or hit hard, this thing is really going to rock the ball. So if you're a banger, this thing can be pretty lethal. And I highly recommend, if you like hitting hard, to make sure you have your top spin down and can get plenty of dip on your balls. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting balls way out. And for a player like me that's more into the control side of things and the short game, I actually find myself playing even more conservatively because I personally don't like to have huge pace on all my hits. So if you don't want to do big drives, you might actually have to hold back on your swings. Also, I have heard some folks complain about the Gearbox Pro Powers having small sweet spots. I personally don't have a lot of issue hitting on the edges in general, so I'm really bad at judging this, but for me, I didn't feel a lot of missed hits. And I really don't think someone that hits off-center shots is going to be looking at a paddle that costs $275, but it's definitely something some players have noted, so it might be worth keeping in mind. Lastly, I want to highlight that the Gearbox Pro's surface is top-notch. It really grabs the ball, which is super important for a paddle with so much pop off the face. And while everything happens fast off the paddle's face, I actually didn't have issues popping the ball up and getting punished for it in the short game. It just has a very unique feel that must have a lot to do with the core and not just the paddle surface. The pop off the face is fast, but you can still really maneuver in place, which I think is the real standout feature of this paddle outside the insane power you can produce. Okay, now I want to talk about where I think this paddle stands in the current marketplace in both tournament and rec play, but I also want to mention the other version as well, which has very similar specs. The Gearbox Pro Power Integra is also 14 millimeters thick with pretty much the same specs, except they've chopped off ½ inch from the head. So this should theoretically make the Integra version a bit faster in the hands, just with a little less power because there won't be as much plow through. And after playing with both quite a bit, I do think the elongated version is the better of the two because it's got that old school blade design, which you don't see in very many paddles these days, and it's just really fun to get that extra reach. And for the non-elongated Integra version, Gearbox didn't widen the face at all, so there's not a lot of increase in control with an expanded sweet spot, in my opinion. But if hand speed is super important to you, the non-elongated Integra option is definitely worth considering and probably has a silhouette closer to some of the now illegal Joola Gen 3 paddles, so if that's what you're trying to replace, this is definitely one you shouldn't skip over. Okay, So these are some really legendary paddles. They really kicked off the power race and started the Gen 3 movement when they first came out, and companies did everything they could to keep up. And it seems some of the other players pushed the boundaries a little too far, and USAP has really put their foot down. There are a lot of great videos out there talking about all that drama, so I won't say a lot, but what the situation really boils down to is if you want a Gen 3 style paddle and want to use that paddle in tournaments, Gearbox Pros are pretty much the only option right now. And what separates Gearbox in general from a lot of other companies is that their paddle design is extremely unique. That was even the case before their Gen 3 versions. The interior of their paddles are not just a cutout of some core with chunks of foam wrapped around them. They have these complex designs with ribs and rubber bands and pieces of foam that are like this kind of magical recipe for paddles that hit really, really hard in the case of the Pro Power line. However, once again, if you hit soft, they'll respond softly as well, which isn't the case with a lot of hot paddles, even ones that aren't Gen 3. Also, I want to re-emphasize just one more time how these paddles hold onto the ball in a really unique way. Whatever's happening allows for really quick pop off the face, but not a lot of pop-ups in the short, soft game. And I think that's what really stands out to me more than anything. A very powerful, poppy paddle that you can actually control if you're into the soft hitting game. So who are these paddles for? Well, they're for anybody that got burned with the Joola fiasco, that love that kind of power, but wants a tournament legal paddle. It's also for folks that maybe have issues generating their own power and want help in that department. And finally, it's for folks that want to rip and bang and have the absolute most legal power at their fingertips. If that's who you think you are, I would just urge you to make sure you've got good control and topspin and make an effort to keep your hits down, especially at rec play. There's no podium or prize on the line in rec play, so I would definitely say be cautious with these paddles. No one should lose an eye in pickleball. As for value, there really are no other paddles like this on the market, at least ones that are tournament legal. I think Gearbox is being pretty fair with their price. I honestly think they could charge more and people would still buy these. And I personally don't think a person brand new to pickleball should be picking one of these up. So I kind of appreciate that there's a barrier to entry to a degree. That being said, I do wish they would allow discount codes. If they ever do, I'll make sure to add it to the description or pin a comment. However, if you want to purchase one using my link, that will help support the channel and would be super appreciated. Okay, that's really all I've got. As a control-oriented player, I actually like having this in my bag when I have to face bangers at rec play, especially ones with EVA paddles or the illegal Gen 3 Joolas, which I don't see disappearing anytime soon. For me, I don't have to change my game up too much, and it's nice to be able to respond to their power super easily. However, I really do think this is a specialty paddle and is really only for players with specific needs. This paddle isn't for everyone, especially inexperienced players in my opinion. Finally, I really do like that Gearbox is pushing the boundaries, is really innovating with their designs, and they don't mind taking a risk and being true trailblazers. It'll be fun to see if other companies can keep up while remaining tournament legal. I'll be sure to leave a link in the description for a Gearbox's site. Please use that link if you'd like to support the channel, and I'll also leave some links and codes for some other cool paddles and paddle companies. Be sure to check those out. Using those also helps me and helps the channel, so it's always appreciated. And please like and subscribe, that helps me too. But most importantly, I hope you get to pickle soon, and just don't forget, it's about having fun.